When we were planning our latest canoe trip, my buddies and I were discussing how to comply with the Forest Service's new requirements for hanging food containers in bear country. We've always just used plastic bear barrels, but now we're supposed to go to the work of hanging them 12 feet high and 6 feet from tree trunks, which is the last thing we geezers want to do after paddling all day. My suggestion was, let's raise the food barrels on a zip line. It'll be way easier hauling them up a slope than to hoist them vertically. We can even zip food directly to our cooking area when needed. I did a really crappy video of a test of concept and put it on YouTube to show my friends. Now that we've used it successfully on an actual trip, I've replaced that old crappy video with this one, showing how you can do it too. It's fun. Here's a photo of the things you need to build and use a zipline pack hanger. I'll be describing these in the video, and at the very end I'll show you an itemized bill of materials showing their approximate costs. A cloth bag around 12 by 16 inches is also needed for packing them up. I'm going to demonstrate what's involved in setting it up. First, I've got a length of Dyneema or AM steel. It's a synthetic rope that is extremely slippery. It goes through tree forks real easily. That's one of the nice things about it. And it's very strong. Bears cannot gnaw through this stuff. But one of the drawbacks is that it's so slippery it's hard to tie knots in it to make them stay. So there's a special kind of knot that works well for tying this loop, which is a requirement of this system, called a water bowline. So look it up. There's several demos on how to tie this knot, and it does not slip. The first step in rigging this system is to throw your length of Dyneema over a tree limb. And it should be a nice high tree limb, maybe 20 feet, 15, 20 feet high. To throw this over, you need a rock. And I found the easiest way to attach the rope for throwing to the rock is just to use some Gorilla Tape. Now at the other end of the Dyneema rope, you need a loop also. And on this loop, I chose to try splicing a loop, which is another option. I don't know that it's any better really. It's probably stronger, but certainly easier to just do another water bowline. But you also need to have a thimble at the inside of this loop, because this is going to be where you attach it to your cable, your wire cable. Before throwing it over the limb, I also found it useful to add another length of cord to the end of this 30-foot Dyneema. I've got about maybe 8 feet here of another piece of Dyneema. You don't need to use Dyneema, you could use anything, but the only purpose of this is that in case you're throwing it over a fork that is 25 feet or 20 feet high, the stuff is so slippery that the rock's going to pull it down again, and you need to have, I just stand on the other end of this Dyneema as I'm throwing it over, so I don't lose the end of the rope when the rock comes down. Okay, it took more tries than usual to get it up there, but for about 3 tries I got it up. It's about maybe 18, 20 feet high. Kind of got hung up on a little twig, so it might come down a little lower when I raise it up. I don't know. It's a good thing I stood on that extra piece of line, because when it came down, I just about lost it. I would have lost it had it not been for this. Anyway, next step is to take this rock off. Then I remove the extra piece of line that kept me from losing it. We need to attach this non-slippery rope to the Dyneema so that we can tie it off on the tree with a non-slippery rope. And I'll just tie a simple knot on this. And now it's time to attach the lower end of the cable to another tree. In this case, I have a tree that's about almost 40 feet from my other tree. It's a little farther than it needs to be, but you can't always choose the distance between trees. So you want to uncoil the cable, and this end of the cable has a cable clamp with a loop and a thimble. So I'm going to pass the free end of the cable through this loop. Hard to do with one hand. Through this loop, and then just tighten it around the tree. So now the cable is secured around the lower tree. The next thing to do is to put the pulleys on the cable. It's important to not forget to do this at this point. Now it is important to have good quality cable or pulleys. I found these nice stainless steel pulleys for cable, which are made for cable, on the internet, on Amazon, for, I guess it was about $10 or $11 per pair of them. And I ended up getting 4 of them because on our trip we used 3 food packs and 1 camp shower. And then the clips at the bottom are used to attach the food packs or beer container, beer barrels, whatever you're using. The next step is to attach the other end of the cable to the Dyneema rope, specifically to the end that has that thimble in it. And you do that by passing the wire through the thimble and then putting a cable clamp on it. You need to kind of estimate where this is going to end up when you raise the line. You can make this loop either bigger or smaller depending on where you think it's going to end up. I think this is going to be about right, so I'm going to try it here. The other point I wanted to make is that for this step, it's really handy to have a little 1/4-inch drive screwdriver with a socket that will fit the nuts on your cable clamp. That is so quick and easy. Another point I wanted to make is, if you're not familiar with cable clamps, it's really important to have this rounded part of the clamp going over the short end of the cable, as that part of the clamp is what's going to grab the cable. If you reverse it, then there's a better chance it could slip. Now it's time to haul that cable up. We got our line hooked up. Just gonna haul it up and wrap it around the tree. So I just took a couple of turns around the tree and tied it off to the Dyneema loop here with a slip knot with another half hitch to secure it. That'll hold. Okay, time for the demo. I have put 80 pounds of cement patio blocks in this pack, and I've attached the pack to the pulley with this quick clip thing here, and I've also attached the leash, which I'm going to pull on to raise the pack to that clip. This is a picture of one of the leashes. I call them leashes because it's kind of like walking your dog as you haul it back up or you let it back down. The blue rope you see here is Dyneema. It's only about 7 or 8 feet of that, and I use that to tie onto the pack, And it's the part that would stick out from the tree after you've hauled the pack up and tied it off. So it's the only part that might be vulnerable to a bear, assuming a bear would be smart enough to figure out how to lower this thing. The yellow rope is really cheap Menard stuff, or plastic rope for 50 feet for $3. It's about 10 feet of that, I think. Anyway, how you do this doesn't matter that much. I did use water bowlines in the blue stuff because that's the slippery stuff, although the yellow is pretty slippery too, so water bowlines might be a good idea there too. And here's a view of the line going up. Okay, it's tied off to the tree. Now, normally in the boundary waters, we're not going to have trees quite this wide. This is a huge tree. So this thing is a lot higher than I can reach. No way a bear is going to jump up there or even be able to grab it in any way. Now on our trip, we only had to be concerned about black bears. And we were hoisting bear barrels, not packs. I don't think we ever got them as high as 10 feet, much less 12 feet. Considering how slippery and tough bear barrels are, we were satisfied with 6 or 7 feet. If you're hanging packs, you probably want to shoot for 10 feet. If you're in grizzly or Kodiak bear territory, go for 12 feet. Those monsters can have a standing height of 10 feet or more. If you're wondering how long it takes to rig this at the campsite, I timed it. Not counting my missed attempts to throw it over the limb, it took me about 10 minutes to fully rig it. That's not bad, considering that each time you use it, it takes only seconds and virtually no effort to raise and lower your packs. It took me about 8 minutes to take it down and pack it up. It may take a few minutes to scout out the best combination of trees to use for hanging height and convenient delivery to your food prep site, but that's part of the fun. How much does it weigh? Everything in my setup totals about 2 pounds. That would be a little much for backpacking, but pretty negligible for a canoe trip. Here is a rough bill of materials for this project. Costs will vary, but you should be able to do it for less than $70. Well, that's all. Here's to happy canoeing, and don't feed the bears.